Hello, my name is Rajesh Chandy. I'm a professor at London Business School, and I want to say welcome to this second of the Voice of the Village roundtables that we've been hosting for the last few weeks. Today's topic is an incredibly important one, and it's about the role of women in India. We have a wonderful panel, and we hope to have a terrific discussion throughout today's today's discussion. Before we get started, though, I have a request. I have a couple of announcements. Thanks to the wonders of technology. Tiago, can we go to the next slide, please? Thanks to the wonders of technology, we are live streaming this discussion on Zoom. If you have the app, you should be able to listen to this discussion in either English or in Hindi. So my request, if you're on the Zoom app, would be to turn to the right channel and pick the language that you prefer. And also within the setting, you have the option to mute audio if the language you do not wish to listen to is also appearing. You can mute the original audio. So if you're listening in Hindi, then mute the English version so that you can listen to the discussion purely in Hindi. Tiago, next slide, please. So this conversation is part of a new initiative on the part of Dharmalife. We'll hear from the CEO and founder of Dharmalife in a few minutes. London Business School, and specifically the Wheeler Institute for Business and Development at London Business School, and Siriti, which is a marketing and communications entity in India. You'll hear from the founder, the co-founder of Siriti, Sohan Shah, in a few minutes as well. Next slide, please, Tiago. So let me spend a few minutes providing some context about the topics we will be discussing today. In the last few years, India has made remarkable progress in relative to historical norms as well as relative to other parts of the world in its efforts to educate Indians more generally, but women in particular. While those efforts have led to increased education among women, remarkably, at the same time, there has been a drastic drop in the employment of women in the workforce. Now, although women in India are busier, most women in India would point out that they're busier than ever these days. The percentage of women employed in paid employment has had a substantial reduction. Next slide, please. Specifically, if you look at the percentage of men, adults, who are engaged actively in work, either looking for work or working itself, 82% of men are either working or looking for work. In contrast, only 25% of women are engaged actively in the labor market. Now, if India were to receive a report card on its performance on this gender gap, it would have among the worst ranks in the entire world. Worse than virtually any country in the neighborhood. Afghanistan, Pakistan, Nepal, all have better rankings on female labor force participation than India does. Next slide, please. And specifically, the challenge or the most recent changes have been in the rural parts of India. Urban India has had fairly, by global standards, fairly low female participation in the labor force. And that's, while it's gone down a bit, it's been fairly steady over the last 10 years or so. There's been, in contrast, a dramatic and precipitous drop in the percentage of women in rural India who work who engage in paid employment. It's gone down by half, and that's part of the challenge we will examine in this discussion. We have a wonderful group of experts, and what's unique about discussion today, next slide, please, is the ability for us to hear about a new initiative, more of which we will talk about in a sec, to empower women by helping them reach their potential, provide them with skills and access to livelihood opportunities. Next slide. And we will do so in a unique and a rather special way. And here's how that'll work. We have a group of panelists who will join us in a few minutes, who are already on. And these are panelists who are joining us from all over the world, from villages in India, in different parts of India, to the West Coast of the United States, to East Asia, and many other parts besides. I'm joining you from London in the UK. And we'll all join as a global voice of the village, but and you will see that we have an impressive group of experts on this topic. But really, I will note that I think some of the other experts on the topic will acknowledge that the real stars of today's panel discussion are three entrepreneurs who are joining us from rural India. And to introduce them and the rest of the panelists, let me hand things over to Gaurav Mehta, the founder and CEO of Dharmalife.
Thank you, Rajesh. Good afternoon, everyone. It's an honor to be, moderating and starting this panel. We are, as Rajesh mentioned, this is one of the key issues we are facing in India at the moment and have been for some time. So from a Dharmalife perspective, this is core to our heart that we're working on this as part of our Women Entrepreneur program and as part of the Jaya Alliance, which you'll hear more about later. So I'll start by requesting Pradeep Nair to introduce the topic and introduce himself. He's the regional director of the Ford Foundation. The Ford Foundation has been the core supporter of our program, the Jaya program you just heard about. So Pradeep, would be great if you could share your thoughts on this. Thank you again for joining us today.
Thank you. Thank you, Gaurav, and thank you, Rajesh, and thank you, Dharma team. And good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, and namaste to everyone. My name is Pradeep. I'm with the Ford Foundation based out of Delhi. We have started, I think our association, Gaurav, with your organization goes back a year ago, and I've been hearing all the wonderful things that you and your team have been doing. Ford Foundation's primary focus, the program that we are most proud of and the one that we've been putting most of our resources behind, is the program around gender equality. So supporting women, especially in our region, address issues of violence and also access equal opportunities. So when Dharmalife came to us and spoke about the programs that they're doing, we thought it a very, very, very good fit to the work that we're doing. Over the last few months, we have also been talking about how if some of the focus can be very, very direct and focused on those women and those communities that are the most marginalized, and if we can work with them to give them access and opportunities, that'll place them better to enter the workforce. And that's when I think Gaurav and his team shared with us, and we were very delighted that actually they've been working on this program called Jaya Alliance. And COVID, though I know it's been horrible for all of us, I think one of the things that helped most of us focus on, and I know Gaurav says this a lot, is actually double down on the use of technology and platforms like Jaya to actually accelerate the work and support that we can give to women communities. So this particular alliance, as I understand it, is going to be an opportunity, a platform mostly driven by technology that will give access to women, especially the women belonging to most marginalized communities, to have opportunities to train and empower themselves to be able to enter the workforce. As a foundation that is strongly invested in this idea, we fully support this initiative and look forward to working with all of you. Hopefully, those attending the call and some of you may be friends and colleagues of yours who are not able to join this call. So we really look forward to having these conversations. Thank you once again.
Thank you, Pradeep. We appreciate your support and your commitment to this cause. May I now move to Bindu Devi from Benares. She's joining us from her nearby her village. So Bindu Devi, could you please share your thoughts on how on yourself and also how you've been working? Namaste.
मेरा नाम बिंदु देवी है। मैं वाराणसी जिले के रामनपुर गांव से हूँ और मैं धर्मालाइफ में पिछले 4 सालों से ही काम कर रही हूँ और मुझे बहुत ही आज खुशी का अवसर मिला है कि आप लोगों के साथ और इतनी बड़ी वार्तालाप करने का मौका मिला है। मैं बहुत खुश हूँ। जी सर, बोलिए आप, थोड़ा प्रॉब्लम आ गया था।
हाँ बिंदु देवी, आप अपने बारे में बताइए प्लीज। अपने बारे में बताइए, आपका जो जया में सफर रहा। इफ यू कुड शेयर अ बिट अबाउट योर सेल्फ एंड योर जर्नी प्लीज। एंड
नमस्ते
we
सर।
apologize to everyone given the Zoom.
मैं बिंदु देवी, मैं वाराणसी जिले के रामनपुर गांव से हूँ और मैं धर्मालाइफ में पिछले कर रही हूँ। शुरू से करो सर, थोड़ा सा प्रॉब्लम आ गया था, आवाज नहीं आ रही थी क्लियर। अभी नमस्ते, मेरा नाम बिंदु देवी है। मैं वाराणसी जिले के रामनपुर गांव से हूँ। मेरे परिवार में 5 लोग हैं। मैं हूँ, मेरे हस्बैंड, मेरे 2 बच्चे हैं, मेरी सासू माँ है। मैं धर्मालाइफ में 2016 से ही काम कर रही हूँ और मैं शादी के पहले घर में ही रहती थी क्योंकि मेरी पढ़ाई पूरी नहीं हो पाई थी, क्योंकि आज की शादी कर दी गई थी, जबकि मैं पढ़ना चाहती थी आगे, लेकिन गरीब परिवार से होने के कारण पढ़ाई छूट गई मेरी। लेकिन ससुराल में एक संस्था के बारे में अपने गांव के प्रधान जी के द्वारा पता चला, तो मैं ज्यादा ही खुश हुई उस समय कि ये संस्था सामाजिक कार्य करती है। तो मैंने इसमें काम करने का निश्चय कर लिया। मैंने पावर की ट्रेनिंग ली और अपने गांव में आकर करना प्रारंभ किया, कैसे वो प्रदूषण से बचे, स्वास्थ्य के ऊपर ध्यान दे। और इस दौरान मैंने इंडक्शन, सैनिटरी नैपकिन्स और सोलर लैंप सेल करके जो इनकम आया मुझे, मैंने उस पैसे को बेसिकली अपने बच्चों की पढ़ाई पर खर्च किए, जो कि मुझे बहुत ही खुशी की बात लगती है। लेकिन सर, जब ये कोरोना का टाइम है तब दिक्कतें तो अचानक से बढ़ी गई। इस दौरान बहुत सारे करना पड़ा, लेकिन इन मुश्किलों में जब मुझे धर्मालाइफ के द्वारा जया प्रोजेक्ट आया है और कैसे फोर्ड फाउंडेशन और धर्मालाइफ के संयुक्त प्रयासों से महिलाओं के कौशल के बारे में जाना जा रहा है और उनको उनकी हुनर के अनुसार प्रशिक्षण देकर उनका, तो मैंने इसमें काम करना स्टार्ट कर दिया। क्योंकि बेसिकली समय की मांग थी, कोविड के कारण महिलाएं एकदम से आजीविका को बढ़ाने के लिए प्रयास में लगी रहती थी। तो मैंने इसमें 164 लोगों का संवेदीकरण किया। इस दौरान मुझे काफी दिक्कतों का सामना करना पड़ा, जैसे कि गांव में कभी महिला के पास मोबाइल अवेलेबल नहीं थी, किसी के पास था तो छोटा वाला मोबाइल था, बेचारे सब इच्छा होते हुए भी प्रशिक्षण के लिए तैयार नहीं हो पाते। बट मैंने इन सबके बावजूद भी 70 लोगों का फॉलो अप किया, उनकी रुचि जानी उसके द्वारा। जस्ट बाद मैंने 35 लोगों का पर्सनल काउंसलिंग भी किया कि आप वीडियो कॉल के जरिए उनको विस्तार से बताया जया प्रोजेक्ट के बारे में कि कैसे ये संस्था आपको अपनी हुनर के अनुसार प्रशिक्षण देती है और आपकी मदद कर सकती है। तो इसमें मैंने आगे चल के सर, मैंने अपने गांव की 5 महिलाओं को अचार का प्रशिक्षण भी दिलवाया कि वो कैसे अपना खुद का आजीविका बढ़ाने के लिए प्रशिक्षण के बाद अपना स्टार्ट कर सकती हैं। जैसे मेरे गांव के पास की दीदी बोली कि दीदी, मेरे घर में मेरे पति शराब पीते हैं, इधर उधर पड़े रहते हैं, आजीविका चलाने में बहुत ज्यादा उनको भी प्रशिक्षण दिलवाया। आज वो सब महिलाएं अपना खुद का अचार बनाती हैं अपने गांव में और आसपास के गांव में बेचकर अपनी आजीविका चला रही हैं। और मेरे ख्याल से कोविड के टाइम में ये जया प्रोजेक्ट एक वरदान की तरह साबित हो रहा है। सर, मैं चाहूंगी कि मैं अपने गांव में और अपने समाज में और महिलाओं करूं और आजीविका से जुड़ूं, क्योंकि मुझे धर्मालाइफ का सहारा मिल गया तो मैं आगे बहुत कुछ करना चाहती हूँ।
Great. Binduji, thank you very much. Yeah, and I think the technology is working now, so great. So if I could ask then, um, if I could ask Katja Freiwald from UN Women, thank you again for being here. If I could ask you, Katja, to talk a bit about the issues at hand and your background. Thank you.
Sure, happy to do that. I'm joining you all from Thailand, and here we say Sawadee-ka. So I'm really pleased to be with all of you. And just like very quickly to share, I'm actually just coming from another event where I was talking to 100 entrepreneurs or women entrepreneurs in Thailand. So I'm happy to share a little bit about this later, but very pleased to see the Indian context or focus on this first. And I'm working for UN Women. And for the ones that haven't heard about UN Women, we are an organization that really is part of the UN family. And our mandate is to really empowering women and to drive gender equality forward. So my colleague Sohela, who normally does this in India for our programs, is unfortunately not here today, but I'm going to share a little bit what we are doing. And as you've heard already, one of the things that obviously as an organization like UN Women is very dear to our heart is that we have seen that women less and less participate in the world of work in India. And as an organization, we have done a lot of research and trying to understand where this comes from. And obviously, this is also not a very easy answer to give, and I'm looking forward to have a lot of conversations around that and hear different perspectives. But one thing I'm going to share is we have recently done some research in India, in rural India, in some of our programs, and try to understand a little bit more what are the concerns and what are the barriers for women to participate, and particularly now also in the context of COVID. And I just can say one thing. One of the things we have seen and what we have learned is the barriers are not different now in COVID. It's just becoming more stronger, and it's more accelerated than before. And things that we see, for example, is that lots of women do not join the workforce because they are always feeling they are in unsafe workplaces. The work conditions very often don't allow them to be there. We also see the social cultural context where very often, and I think this is not something only in India, but also in other countries, where women still are very often are responsible of domestic obligations, taking care of families, children, and doing all the domestic work. But what we also have learned in this research that there are positive signs and that there are women that, like you, that are going into entrepreneurship, but even these women that are so kind of powerful and really take this journey are facing lots of hurdles. And I'm keen to hear, and I've met some of you in person with Dharmalife, some of your colleagues, but a lot of the things, just kind of to mention a couple, is access to finance and getting financially independent. And very often women in India, as we have seen, are denied any forms of credits because you don't have any collateral. So there is one big area around finance, access to capital. One area I mentioned already is really the increased care responsibilities that we see right now, really increasing even more with the pandemic. And really curious to hear from the people in the villages if this is impacting you as well. And then a last thing I want to share, maybe on a very positive note, UN Women has been running some programs in India. One of the programs I just gonna share with you, which is a little bit similar what Jaya is doing. It's called Second Chance Education, and it's a program that really works with entrepreneurs together with micro entrepreneurs, but it also works together with women that had to opt out of education early on because of family duties or any other reasons. And the program really helps them to acquire new skills to enter the work market in a different way, but is also supporting enterprises that are existing. And Binju, I was really happy to hear when you were talking about the pickles business, because I think these are businesses that in our second education program would really fall, and how to help them to grow faster and be more profitable. So really interesting to hear this. And I'm going to close to hear all of you just saying a last thing. UN Women has also a very unique position, I think, that we are responsible and art organization that also works very strongly with the governments together. So one of my commitments that I have done, and I'm going to ask you this later, what are the things, if we are speaking on my colleagues back to the governments, which are the things that you want to see changed, or which are areas where you need support in the situation right now? And with this, I'm going to hand it back over to Gaurav, and thanking you for bringing all of us together here.
Thanks, Katya. So can I now move to Nija Kukshal from Uttarakhand? Nija ji, namaste.
Namaskar, sir.
So Nija ji, can you please give us a bit of your background, as well as what happened during the COVID situation, and how you've been working with other women to get them into the workforce as part of the Jaya program?
जी सर, नमस्कार सर। मेरा नाम नीजा कुक्षाल है। मेरा गांव बेटगांव है। मेरे ब्लॉक का नाम करजी खाल है। डिस्ट्रिक्ट मेरा पौड़ी गढ़वाल है और मैं उत्तराखंड से रहने वाली हूँ। मेरा एक छोटा सा परिवार है, इसमें मेरे 2 बच्चे, मेरे हस्बैंड, मेरे ससुर जी हैं जो सेना से सेवानिवृत्त हैं, और मैंने MA हिस्ट्री से किया हुआ है। लेकिन समाज के प्रति, उनके प्रति कुछ काम करने की दिली इच्छा जब बचपन से ही मेरे मन में रहती थी, जो शादी के बाद भी कंटिन्यू चलता रहा। मैं इसके लिए कुछ करना चाहती थी, लेकिन मुझे कोई प्लेटफॉर्म नहीं मिला। इसी बीच मुझे एक चिर परिचित महिला मिली, जिन्होंने मुझे ये बताया कि धर्मालाइफ हमारे सर्जिकल ब्लॉक में महिलाओं के सशक्तिकरण के लिए बहुत अच्छा काम कर रही है। मैंने उनसे संपर्क जोड़ा और उनके साथ मैं जुड़ गई। उनके साथ मैं धर्मालाइफ के साथ मैं पिछले 1 साल से जुड़ी हूँ, और धर्मालाइफ के मैंने काफी प्रोजेक्ट में काम किया, जैसे दीदी का साक्षरता हो गया, महिलाओं को मासिक धर्म में साफ सफाई और सैनिटाइजर इस्तेमाल करना, उसका डिस्ट्रीब्यूट करना, ये सब कुछ मैंने उसमें उनको सिखाया। उसके बाद मैं हमारा एक अक्षय ऊर्जा करके जो प्रोजेक्ट आया था, मैंने उसमें भी काम किया। मैंने घर घर जाके सोलर लाइट और सोलर टॉर्च के बारे में लोगों को जागरूक किया, और काफी मात्रा में मैंने उनको सेल भी किया है, जो कि मेरे पास अभी भी डिमांड आ रही है। इसी बीच मार्च में जो हमारा नया प्रोजेक्ट आया, जया प्रोजेक्ट, उस समय हमें बहुत उत्साह था, बहुत खुशी थी कि हमने इस प्रोजेक्ट पर काम करना है। लेकिन भारत में मार्च 25 तारीख को कोरोना काल के चलते हुए लॉकडाउन लग गया और हम लॉकडाउन में फंस गए। उसमें कुछ काम नहीं कर पाए, सब कुछ घर के अंदर करना था। इतनी परेशानियों का सामना करते हुए भी मैंने लोगों से संपर्क साधा, और उनसे संपर्क साधने के बाद मैंने उनके एक व्हाट्सएप ग्रुप बनाया, जिसमें मैंने उन 70 महिलाओं का संवेदीकरण किया, उनको अपने जय प्रोजेक्ट के बारे में बताया। उसमें मैंने फिर 40 महिलाओं के साथ फोन पर संपर्क करके उनके साथ बातचीत करके अपने प्रोजेक्ट के बारे में बात किया, जिस हिसाब से आपका कौशल है उस हिसाब से आप कोर्स कर सकते हो। इसी में मैंने 23 महिलाओं के साथ जो मैं स्वयं व्यक्तिगत उनसे बात करी, और उनके सामने व्यक्तिगत सारी बातें रखी कि हम इस जो जया प्रोजेक्ट है, इसमें हम बहुत सारा काम कर सकते हैं, और भी घर बैठे ऑनलाइन घर में बैठ के काम कर सकते हैं, जिसमें आपको बाहर जाने की जरूरत नहीं। जो कोविड के चलते हुए हमको घरों में अंदर रखा गया, इसमें हम सारा काम कर सकते हैं। इसी के चलते उसमें से 8 महिलाएं मेरे पास आज कोर्स के लिए तैयार हो रखी हैं, और जो इसमें कुछ महिलाएं जो हमारी प्रवासी बाहर से आई हुई थी, उनके पास आजीविका के लिए बहुत समस्या खड़ी हो गई थी, जिस करके उन्होंने मुझे ये कहा कि दीदी क्यों ना हमारे लिए भी कुछ किया जाए। तो मैंने ये बात धर्मालाइफ के सामने रखी। उन्होंने कहा दीदी इन लोगों को क्यों ना हम मशरूम के यूनिट लगाएं। हमें इसलिए उन्होंने मुझे पौड़ी में जो हमारा ग्रीन पहाड़ी फूड करके जो संस्थान है, उन्होंने हमें 2 दिन की ट्रेनिंग दी। इसमें मैंने खुद भी एक यूनिट लगाई और मुझे बहुत अच्छा लगा। मैंने 5 महिलाओं को जोड़ा, और उन 5 महिलाओं को जोड़ के मैंने उनका एक समूह बनाया और उनकी मशरूम की यूनिट लगाई, जिससे उनको 10,000 रुपए का फायदा हुआ। इसी दौरान इनमें से जो 3 महिलाएं थी, उन्होंने खुद का अपना मशरूम का यूनिट लगाया है और उसको कंटिन्यू करती रहती हैं और उससे अपनी आजीविका चला रही हैं। लेकिन मैं धर्मा लाइफ से आगे भी महिलाओं के लिए इसी तरह के प्रोजेक्ट लाने की जो मांग करती हूँ और उनसे उम्मीद करती हूँ कि हमारी उत्तराखंड की महिलाएं या पहाड़ों की महिलाओं के उत्थान में आप हमारा सहयोग करेंगे। धन्यवाद।
Great. Nijaji, thank you. Dhanyavad. Thank you very much. May I now request Jessie from EY to give us a bit of background, actually different perspective on this take more on a corporate level. But I think that's the beauty of our panel today. We have an enormous diversity. So Jessie, over to you.
Thanks, Gaurav, and it's great to be here with you all at this Voice of the Village event series with Dharmalife and the Wheeler Institute, and to be talking about this incredibly important topic of women in the workforce. As Gaurav said, my name is Jessie, and I'm joining you here from rainy London, and I lead the work that EY does globally to support impact entrepreneurs like Gaurav, but also like Bindu, Anita, and Nija, and it's fantastic to be able to speak with you. As a quick introduction to EY, we are a global professional services firm. We have over 300,000 employees in over 150 countries, and our purpose is to build a better working world. Last year, we launched a bold ambition to positively impact the lives of 1 billion people by 2030 through a new program that we call EY Ripples, creating a ripple effect in our communities around the world. And we aim to achieve that by extending the value of our EY knowledge and our networks on a pro bono basis to people and places that we might not otherwise reach through our typical commercial business. And that includes supporting young and underserved women to develop the transferable skills that are required to thrive in the workforce of the future, and also helping entrepreneurs who are really role modeling gender inclusion to scale their businesses. And it's through that EY Ripples program that we came to support Dharmalife. In fact, through a joint initiative that EY is part of with Unilever and also the UK's Foreign Commonwealth and Development Office, the FCDO. That joint initiative is called Transform and provides grant funding and business support to businesses in sub-Saharan Africa and South Asia. And listening to the other panelists that have gone before me and the inspiring entrepreneurs discuss the barriers and the lessons learned, I'm struck by kind of three key themes, and many of these are echoes of what others have said before, but I think they're so important for enabling women to really realize their potential. The first is partnership, the second is technology, and the third is the economic imperative of this. And I'll start maybe with the latter. I think we all need to be very clear and vocal on the business case for achieving gender equality, for achieving SDG 5, and specifically for women in the workplace. And that is a moral imperative of ensuring that women have all the same opportunities as men, but it's also an economic one at both the government level and the business level. There's lots of research that shows that equality leads to higher GDP, and at the business level, businesses with women at the top are worth more than those without, and more equality within the workforce has been shown time and time again to increase productivity. And that's true for big businesses like EY, it's true for medium-sized businesses like Dharmalife, and it's also true for smaller businesses like those that Bindu, you, Anita, and Nija are running. The second theme I quickly wanted to touch upon that has already been talked about before is technology. And this has been said before, but if there is one good thing that has come through this COVID-19 pandemic, I think it is the acceleration of the uptake of technology. And technology can be a huge enabler, I think, to women's participation in the workforce due to the flexibility, the speed, and the reach that can be achieved. And I think the Jaya Alliance, in the incredible work that these entrepreneurs businesses are doing is a fantastic example of that. But it's also important, I think, to recognize that technology itself is not good or bad. It's an enabler. And so how we apply it can be either inclusive or exclusionary. And EY and UN Women have actually joined forces to create innovation principles to help businesses of all sizes to empower more women through technology. And finally, the third theme that again has been already touched upon, but I really wanted to kind of emphasize is the power and the importance of partnership. Because I think with all issues like this, but particularly this incredibly challenging issue of gender equality, I don't think it can be achieved by any single group or any single organization alone. From my perspective, what's important is that women, entrepreneurs, organizations understand what they can achieve through their own work to empower other women, understand what their strengths are, but also understand where they can get support from others, and then actively seek out other people or organizations with complementary capabilities. And that's why we here at EY, we collaborate with UN Women, with the likes of Unilever and the FCDO through Transform, but also with Dharmalife and entrepreneurs that we can support to grow, but also can learn from. And so in summary, I'd encourage everyone that's joining this call, from leaders of big businesses, small businesses all around the world, to be vocal about the business case for women's participation in the workforce, to embrace technology, but also be intentional in how we design and use it. And then also to actively collaborate with others, because I think we'll always achieve more together than we could ever achieve alone. Back to you, Gaurav.
Thank you, Jessie. Absolutely. I think I completely agree with your point on partnerships. I think this is actually where I think previous solutions to this problem, I think we would need to have cross-sectoral, kind of regional, multi-level partnerships to solve this. And I think it's going to take a collective effort to get there. So I completely agree with you. So I would now move to our last entrepreneur, Anita Devi from Jharkhand. Anita ji, namaste. So Anita ji, could you please give us a bit of background on yourself and also similarly how you've been working with women to get them into the workforce and on the skilling side?
नमस्कार सर, मेरा नाम अनीता देवी, मैं रांची झारखंड से हूँ और मैं पिछले 2 साल से धर्मालाइफ से जुड़कर महिलाओं की उन्नति और उनकी विकास के लिए कार्य कर रही हूँ। मेरे जीवन में बहुत सी उतार चढ़ाव आया, पर मैंने अपनी कौशल और आत्मविश्वास से अपने घर को संभाला। मेरे घर में 5 परिवार है, हम 2 और हमारे 3 बच्चे हैं। मैंने अपने बच्चों को पढ़ाया, बेटे की शादी भी कराई। मेरी इस छवि को धर्मालाइफ ने सराहा और मुझे एक कुशल उद्यमी बनने का अवसर प्रदान किया। मैं धर्मालाइफ से जुड़कर काम की, धर्मालाइफ से जो भी प्रोडक्ट आई, उस प्रोडक्ट की गुणवत्ता मैंने अपने गांव की एरिया में उन लोगों को बताई और उसे बेचने का भी काम किया। उसे बेच करके मुझे जो भी आमदनी आई, उस आमदनी को अपने घर परिवार में खर्च किया। काम अच्छा खासा चल रहा था, पर बीच में कोरोना आ गया। कोरोना आने के कारण पूरे दुनिया लॉकडाउन हो गया, सारे लोग अस्त व्यस्त हो गए, सारे कितने देश की पूरे जनता की चली गई रोजगार। घर में लोग बंद हो गए, परेशान हो गए। पर धर्मा लाइफ के माध्यम से एक ग्रुप बनाया संग्रामक का, उसमें अखबार के जरिए, टीवी के समाचार के जरिए, मोबाइल की न्यूज के जरिए कोरोना से प्रेरित करते हुए मैंने एक मनोरंजन भी, एक से भले 2 के रूप में मनोरंजन करवाया। पेंटिंग करवाना या रंगोली बनवाना या और साड़ी फॉल लगाना, जिससे महिलाओं को अच्छा भी लगा और बच्चों को रंगोली बनाने में इंटरेस्टिंग लगी। इसी के साथ एक और जया परियोजना धर्मा लाइफ से आया, जिसे हमने जाना, बहुत अपना सा लगा। मुझे यूँ अपना पुराना ज़िंदगी याद आया कि मैंने जो संघर्ष किया, मेरे जीवन में जो भी कठिनाई आई, उस कठिनाई को मैं अपने महिलाओं, गाँव की महिलाओं को कतई नहीं भोगने दूँगी, कतई नहीं गुजरने दूँगी। क्योंकि जया परियोजना ऐसी परियोजना है, जो महिलाओं को जीने की एक शक्ति देती है, किसी के आगे ना झुके ऐसी एक प्रेरणा देती है। मैं इसी उद्देश्य के साथ जया परियोजना के माध्यम से एक ग्रुप बनाई। उस ग्रुप में 106 लोगों को मैंने संवेदीकरण किया। उस संवेदीकरण में कहते हुए मैंने 75 लोगों को फॉलो कर करके उनकी गुण को, उनकी जो कौशल है, उनकी जो छवि है, जो उनको रुचि है, उसको जानने का प्रयास किया। और जाना उसमें तो बहुत सा दिक्कतें भी आई। महिलाओं ने तो उसके घर से भी कुछ आवाज आया कि हमारे घर की बहू बेटी अगर बाहर जाएगी, अलग से कुछ कार्य करेगी तो हमारा क्या होगा। दूसरा बार मैंने 50 लोगों का पर्सनल व्यक्तिगत से परामर्श किया, तो उन लोगों में से और सी मतलब समस्या आई कि हमारे पास मोबाइल नहीं है या घर में एक ही मोबाइल है तो मैं कैसे काम करूंगी। तो मैंने उनको समझाया कि आप अगर 1 घंटे के लिए 75 दिन अगर मोबाइल अपने घर में देंगे अपने घर की बहू या बेटी को, तो आपका जीने का एक मकसद सुनहरा बनेगा, आपका घर में एक रोजगार बनेगा, आपका मतलब खर्च में मदद मिलेगी, आपकी अच्छी घर की खुशियां लौटाएगी। इस तरह करके मैंने महिलाओं को समझाया और उन्होंने माना और करने के लिए प्रेरित भी हुआ। और मुझे अभी याद करते कि दीदी ने अगर आज संघर्ष नहीं की होती तो आज हम लोग ये यहाँ तक नहीं पहुंचते। इस तरह करके मैंने 10 लोगों को नामांकन कराया। मैं धर्मा लाइफ को धन्यवाद देती हूँ कि मुझे एक कुशल उद्यमी बनने का अवसर प्रदान किया। मैं धर्मा लाइफ से और भी उम्मीद करती हूँ कि और ऐसी परियोजना लाए और हम महिलाओं को सशक्त करें। जय धर्मा, विजय धर्मा। धन्यवाद।
Thank you, Anita ji. Again, I think we'll get more into the discussions around what the challenges are. So I look forward to the next segment. I mean, I think Diva, I will ask you to go next. So Diva Tar is joining us from the Gates Foundation. She has been working in this space for a long time. So Diva, I would request you, thanks again for joining. I would request you to also share your perspective on this topic, but also, I mean, given what everyone has said, I think synthesize maybe some of the key challenges to get us into the next segment as well around questions. So Diva, over to you.
Thanks, Gaurav. As Gaurav mentioned, I work with the Gates Foundation with their gender equality team, where I lead work on gender data and evidence. In India, we're also focusing on women's work in enterprise and generating evidence on what works to promote women's work. As Rajesh mentioned earlier, India has one of the lowest labor force participation rates in the world, and this has been exacerbated by COVID. Some of the entrepreneurs mentioned and others touched on. Women were anyway less likely to be in the labor force, and with COVID, this has only made things worse. Conditional on being employed, women are now actually less likely to be in the workforce, more likely to have lost jobs, more likely to have faced closures for their businesses due to COVID, having exacerbated some of the issues various panelists discussed. Things like unpaid care work, domestic duties, safety and mobility, so access to transport, supply chains, access to financing. Digital gender gaps remain. So even though technology is a contributor to the kinds of jobs that Dharmalife has, as Anita Devi mentioned, access to technology still remains an issue for many women. And one of the things that we didn't touch on was gender norms, the kind of social pressure that Anita also touched on, which is that there is still strong norms around gender roles, especially for married women. More than half of India actually disapproves of women working if their husband can provide for the family. And with rising family income, we've actually seen women's labor force participation drop. For Jaya Alliance, really look forward to the fact that women are also going to be building sort of acceptance within communities, enabling an environment for women in which they can work freely and really help fill in some of the gaps that women's enterprises and workforce are facing. I think, given the fact that there is shrinking agricultural jobs, growing urbanization of jobs, the fact that some of these initiatives are really going to be helping create suitable, flexible jobs for women given the latent demand that there actually is for work, is going to be really important to see. And I wish Dharmalife and all the entrepreneurs all the best in these efforts. I'll pause there.
Thank you, Diva. So now I think we come. Thank you again to all the panelists for those initial kind of introductions. Now we'll come to, I think, one of the most exciting segments. I think we have. So there'll be some more detail on the Jaya Alliance, which Sohan will share. Towards the end of the session, we have an exciting video for all of you as well. But now I would hand over to Rajesh. I think just one point here, this is an open discussion, so look forward to questions from the audience and for us to have a great conversation. I'll hand over to Rajesh to take us through some of the questions and discussion amongst the panelists.
Thank you, Gaurav, and thank you each to the panelists for that wonderfully rich, diverse, and yet fairly consistent set of ideas. The voices of the villagers in rural India were quite consistent with the voices of London and Seattle and many other places. Now, this is an opportunity next for us to do two things. First, to allow for a chance for us to ask each other questions. So those on the panel, our entrepreneurs have some questions, I understand, for other members of the panel who are from outside India or indeed even within India. And conversely, those who are who are not Dharmalife entrepreneurs have questions for the entrepreneurs to hear truly the voices of the village. So we'll take a few minutes to have that conversation. And before we get started with those conversations, I will start with questions from the villages for those outside rural India. But before we do that, let me point out to those who are participating with us. I see hundreds and hundreds of participants. Can I encourage you to send in questions? What questions do you have for members of the panel? And Gaurav and I will try our best to ask your questions or bring together a series of questions so that we can get a greater participation on the part of those who are watching or engaging in this conversation. So please please send those questions in. We will address them. We'll keep some time aside. This session will go for 75 minutes. And so we'll have some time to have a full discussion as much as possible. So with that as background, let me invite our entrepreneurs to ask questions they may have for other members of the panel. Okay, and as we wait for the translation, please also have questions for us. Let me, Nija ji or Anita ji?
Bindu ji, can you,
Bindu ji, what questions do you have for others on this discussion? Bindu ji?
जी पहुंच रही है। जी सर, मैं ये जानना चाहती हूँ कि क्या विदेशों में भी महिलाओं को समान साथ काम करने का मेरा ये पहले से इच्छा थी जानने के लिए, तो आज जानना चाहती हूँ, बताइए।
Jesse, can I, since you lead some of the activities on behalf of ENY around this, can your thoughts, women outside India, what's the status and homemakers relatively to those who engage in paid employment?
Sure. So Bindu, great question, and not an easy question to answer, but I'll give maybe my perspective in the UK context where I'm based, and therefore where I have the most personal experience. And I think I would say my experience in the UK is mixed. So so in terms of your specific question, how do women participate in the workforce in the UK? Are there restrictions on being homemakers? I would say in many ways, no. We have very good, strong laws, I would say, in the UK around equality that support women's participation in the workforce. I think also culturally, I find there's a very strong desire from both men and women for both men and women to play a role in homemaking, and for both men and women to play a role in the workforce. And if I give my personal experience, both myself and my husband, we both work. We also share the homework together as well. So we both clean, we both look after our families, and we also both earn the same amount of money as well. And we both equally control decision making in the household. However, I still think actually within the UK, there is more work to be done, as always, in this topic to achieve gender equality. And if I give an example of that, statistically across the UK, women still earn less than men. So despite all the progress that we've made, there is still work to be done in the UK. So that's my personal experience in the UK, Rajesh and Bindu. Hopefully that helps to answer your question a little bit.
Thank you very much, Jesse. Thank you. That also gives us some indicators that we've talked about before about intentionality and responsibility over care and so on that that we should keep in mind, that resonates from what you've just said. Other questions from Anita ji or Nirja ji? Do you have any questions for our panels? Anita ji? Could you mute? Yes, please. Could you unmute yourself, Anita ji? Please, what is your question, please?
सर हम झारखंड से हैं सर, इसीलिए आपसे हम जानना चाहते हैं सर कि हमारे झारखंड में आदिवासी लोग बहुमूल्य हैं। तो सर आदिवासी कला संस्कृति के लिए आप हमारी किस तरह से मदद कर सकते हैं सर?
Okay.
मदद या बढ़ावा मतलब किस
Maybe
तरह से आप कर सकते हैं सर?
Katya, maybe I could frame that question to you. Given your experience with UN Women and all of the different programs that you're aware of and have supported, what about art and craft and cultural areas of heritage? How can women participate, and are there success stories that you're aware of where tribal art and tribal culture, for example, or more generally, women have been able to engage in these cultural pursuits?
Yeah, I can do this on behalf of my colleagues in India who just recently had actually a program in one of the more tribal states in, if I pronounce this right, in Odisha. Sorry if not rightly pronounced. But one of the learnings and things that they have shared with us is purely working with women in the community and providing them opportunities like Dharmalife does this is not enough to really fully address the issue of inequalities between men and women. And so from our perspective and the way how we have kind of worked together is really engaging much more the whole community, because everyone needs to be contributing to this and needs to change if we want to see change. So that also means including the men in the community, the children, the community elders, etc. So from our perspective, we don't look at gender equality only one-sided and saying we need to economically provide the means, the skills, etc. to women, but it needs to have a much deeper approach to further involving the communities and looking also and educating the wider communities on the rights that women have. So it's rights for your own kind of safety, rights to be not being violated by anyone, rights to equal access to bank accounts, finances, etc. So a short answer to a very long and complex issue. Economic empowerment and providing jobs opportunities is one thing, but really requires a much deeper engagement. And I'm looking forward and hoping actually that in one or the other way, some of our learnings can also come into Dharmalife's learnings, and hopefully you're going to be benefiting from this at a certain moment. And at this stage, I can maybe also just share that Dharmalife and UN Women will be starting more together in India as well in the future and addressing some of these areas.
Terrific. Katya, what I also hear from you as you describe the lessons from your colleagues in Odisha is some themes that are not unique to tribal areas, themes that are not unique to cultural aspects within these areas. In fact, it relates to a point that Jesse had made about partnerships. Partnerships exist not only of the kind that we've been describing here between important entities like the United Nations and large corporations such as E&Y and Dharmalife and Gates Foundation, but partnerships that exist within communities as well. And partnerships not only among women, these amazing women who represent some of the entrepreneurs that Dharmalife works with, but also men within the communities and the general environment. Thank you for that, Katya. I will, Nirjaji, if you have questions for the panel, I could come back to you. But in the meantime, let me invite members of the other members of the panel from who are not Dharmalife entrepreneurs to ask any questions to our voices of the village. Diva, can I invite you to pose any questions? You've provided a wonderful overview and facts, statistics, and a broad picture of the state of the world and specifically India. If we had to go deep into a village and ask an entrepreneur in a village, what questions would you have, please?
Thanks, Rajesh. Given that we've had great perspectives from different entrepreneurs in different parts of India, I'd love to ask them actually what they think is the number one constraint or barrier that they'd like to see addressed for young women in their village to enter and stay in the labor force.
Great. Can I invite Nirjaji to answer that question? What barriers for young women does she perceive from her perspective in Uttarakhand? And we can bring in other members of the DLE, Dharmalife Entrepreneur Team as well. Nirjaji?
जी सर, मैं उत्तराखंड के पहाड़ी क्षेत्र से हूँ और पहाड़ों में महिलाओं के सामने कई समस्याएं आती हैं सर जी, क्योंकि यहाँ तो सुबह 7 बजे मतलब सुबह रात तो ये मैं सुबह जल्दी उठना पड़ता है और रात को हमको शाम को जल्दी अपने काम से घर आना पड़ता है। तो मैं ये उत्तराखंड की महिलाओं के लिए तो जो पहाड़ी इलाके में है उनके लिए तो बहुत सारी परेशानियां होती है, लेकिन उन परेशानियों को भी अपना काम करने में वो बहुत सक्षम होती हैं और अपने काम को पूरा करती हैं। लेकिन मैं धर्मा लाइफ में जिस तरह से हमारे लिए ये प्रोजेक्ट लाए हैं उससे वो उनके अंदर आत्मविश्वास जगाया है और उद्यमी वाला काम असल काम अपना घर ही में कर रहे हैं। लेकिन मैं ये चाहती हूँ कि मेरे उत्तराखंड में कुछ मेरे प्रवासी भाई बहन भी आए हैं, उनके लिए भी कुछ अलग सा अगर इस तरह का कोई प्रोजेक्ट आता है तो आप हमारे लिए उनके लिए कर दीजिए, क्योंकि वो लोग आजकल उनकी आजीविका बिल्कुल खत्म हो रखी है और वो बहुत परेशान है। और विशेषकर जब घर में किसी भी मेंबर की नौकरी चली जाए या घर में आजीविका का साधन न रहे तो सबसे ज्यादा परेशानी तो घर की महिला को होता है, क्योंकि घर चलाना है, परिवार चलाना है। तो मैं इस बारे में भी कहूंगी आपसे कि उनके लिए भी कुछ हो जाए। और हाँ, गांव में जो महिलाएं हैं अपना काम करती हैं, सारा काम कर लेती हैं, लेकिन थोड़ा बहुत दिक्कतें तो आती रहती है, क्योंकि कभी परिवार की वजह से, कभी छोटे बच्चों की वजह से। तो आप जो आपने हमें जय प्रोजेक्ट में काम करवाया है उसमें तो वो लोग सक्षम है और कर रही हैं।
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Nija ji. Thank you. I heard many things there. And in a typical entrepreneur fashion, when asked a question about problems, she also provided answers on solutions. So on the problems, I heard time being an issue, as well as money being an issue. And of course, she rightly pointed out the role that entities like Dharmalife can play in providing motivation as well as awareness and opportunities. Can I ask, Bindu Devi ji, you're from Uttar Pradesh, from Varanasi. What are your thoughts on, it's a very different place from Uttarakhand. What are your thoughts about the problems that especially young women today, who may have had a higher level of education than their mothers in the past, what are the problems that young women might face as they consider work opportunities?
जी, नई उम्र की महिलाओं के साथ तो और भी समस्या है सर, क्योंकि हम ग्रामीण क्षेत्र से हैं तो आपको सच्चाई बता रहे हैं। आप नोट कर सकते हैं कि हम महिलाओं के बीच में जाते हैं और उनके साथ काम करते हैं तो मुझे महसूस भी हो जाता है कि इनके घर परिवार के लोग क्या सोच रहे हैं इनके बारे में। सर पर्सनली उनको प्रॉब्लम होता है कि उनको लगता है कि कुछ उम्र बीत जाने के बाद ही बाहर निकलना चाहिए, काम करना चाहिए। अभी गांव में ये प्रथा सी चली आ रही है कि अभी महिलाओं को जैसे नई है या किशोरियां हैं तो उनको वो अगर पढ़ लिख रही है तो बाहर निकल सकती है। अगर किसी वजह से पढ़ाई छुट्टी वो कुछ और करना चाहती हैं तो उनको परिवार का दबाव बना रहता है कि अभी नहीं, या तो आप शादी हो जाने के बाद अपने ससुराल में जाओ, वो लोग समझेगी क्या करना है। लेकिन अगर जो महिलाएं हैं जिनकी शादी होकर आई हैं नई वो अगर निकलना चाह रहे हैं तो उनके लिए ये दिक्कत आती है कि अभी है तो आप नए हो, अभी क्या करोगे बाहर निकल कर, अभी आपको नहीं निकलना चाहिए, अभी कुछ दिन और घर में रहना चाहिए। बट वो महिला चाहती है कि वो निकल कर कुछ करे, क्योंकि उसके अंदर इच्छा शक्ति है कि वो कर सकते हैं। बट सर आपको एक सच्चाई बता रही हूँ कि अभी भी गाँव में ये सब समस्याएं हैं कि पुरुष प्रधान अपनी महिला को घर की, जो कि उनको लगता है कि कुछ दिन बाद जैसे पुरानी हो जाएंगी तो निकलेंगी तो बेटर रहेगा। पता नहीं सब सर बहुत सारी समस्याएं जिसका समाधान अभी संघर्ष के जरिए किया जा रहा है, काश भविष्य में हो पाए।
Thank you very much. Thank you, Binduji. Diva, I hear some of your comments about social norms being reflected back to you from the village. And of course, that is a major challenge. And Bindu Deviji's point about intense pressures is a really important one for us to keep in mind. Intense pressures from society, as well as a potential opportunity because of education, at least in the short term. Again, can I invite our participants who are listening, watching, to send their questions to us now we'll have a brief introduction to some of the solutions that we have been that Dharmalife and DL Lab specifically in collaboration with Samviti have been Siriti rather have been pursuing. I will hand things over for a brief overview of some of these initiatives to Sohan Shah, the founder of Siriti. But please do send some your questions over. Now, let me make a note. When you send questions, you will not see the questions. We will see the questions. So if you don't see any questions on your Zoom account, that's not because we can't see it. We're able to see it. So Atul Mittalji, I see your question. Shikha Aluwalia, I see your question. Please send in those questions. We'll try to get to as many as possible. For now, as you consider those questions for all of our panelists, let me hand things over to Sohan for a brief word about what else we're up to.
Hello, everyone, and namaste to all the different time zones that are here. Tiago, it'll be nice if you can put the slide up. Thank you. Lovely. So, as we heard, and I heard one of the panelists talk about this, that it's an imperative at an opportunity level and also at an economic level. And I think that's the reason an alliance is needed. It's not something that can be left to later. It needs to happen now. The benefits of this imperative are not just incremental, they're exponential in these given times. And with technology and what the times have forced us to arrive at, I think the timing of the Jaya Alliance is ideal. So I'm just going to talk to you a little bit about the Jaya Alliance, first from a larger macro perspective. It's a framework which undertakes 5 different steps to actually get you to the destination. It talks about mass sensitization, where what the panelists spoke about in terms of norms and perceptions and preconceptions and prejudices. How do you sensitize them about that, about the opportunities available? Using the power of a Dharmalife entrepreneur and using counseling and technology. So using their relationships and using technology, merging that together to get their communities to get counseled by the Dharmalife entrepreneur. Moving on to enrolling onto the platform, and this is the platform which we are now rolling out, which is the Jaya app, which gives women like we have on this panel today, Binduji, Anitaji, and Nirjaji, women like that and more, opportunities to access livelihood, training, vocational guidance in their areas. So the Alliance also helps them through the DLEs enroll, skill, go through different formats of skilling, and actually arrive at livelihood, which could be being entrepreneurial and starting your own business or doing a job, getting a job. That's the framework of the Jaya Alliance. That's the entire comprehensive framework. And it closes the loop. We don't leave it at an associate level. We say, let's take it through and through. And that's only possible as something that Gaurav said earlier, that imperative can only be answered through an alliance. So that every step of the way we have partners who kind of pass the baton on to the other, where you're kind of stronger because of all your moving parts. In all, as at a concept level, it's a technology-driven, community-facing opportunity and livelihood platform. That's what it really is, where we are trying to close it end to end. And we already have partners from V4 Village and also partners like Pratham on ground who are on board, and you'll hear about the rollout as it happens. Can we move to the next slide, please? Let's talk about Jaya a bit, and I want to just share something that Jaya is a common name in India, and it actually means victory from within. And that's interesting to keep in mind. Vijaya is another name which means victory over something else, but Jaya is victory from within. And I think that's important. While we have the framework in place, it's also important to address what many panelists correctly raised is the norms, restrictions, perceptions that you have to rise over. And to do that, one of the things that we used are projective techniques and engagement and creativity, so that you're not just doing more of the same. You're trying to create an inflection point in minds and hearts of the women and of people around them. And using that, we created different campaigns, which is, again, through our DLEs, which is our human network, and through the social network of WhatsApp. That's how we cascaded these activities. I'll talk you through a few of them. The entire activity before today is called Chahoge to Paoge, which actually means that if you can dream it, you can do it. But the first step is to actually dream it. Within that, we did a couple of activities where, in India, Bollywood and cricket are two almost extensions of ways of life. And we used Bollywood dialogues to aspirational Bollywood dialogues that women in rural India could actually say out loudly, to internalize and go through them and empower them to see to feel, to hear how it feels to say those dialogues. And we had campaigns within the Chaoge to Paoge campaign. We also had campaigns for them to help projectively think of what their business would be called if they ever had to name it. Would they name it after their child? Would they name it after an ethos they believe in? And those are some of the activities that we've conducted through the DLEs. Each of the DLEs have had 800 to 120, 130, 80 to 120, 130 people in their groups. And that's given a kind of sense of community to take on this opportunity of invoking your consciousness about, let me get onto this new path. What do I have in me to try and aspire to and reach out to? So it's an inspirational approach which we are using. So that was just a quick segue into what the platform is at a larger level. And the first step of the platform, where while we do the hard work and the heavy lifting of connecting, we're also very aware as this alliance that we need to go one step further and inspire and help them aspire parallelly throughout the platform. Yes, back to you, Rajesh.
Thank you very much. You can drop that. Thank you very much. So we have a few minutes for questions, and I see questions coming through. I'm going to try and combine, in the interest of time, some of these questions. The first question, partly from Atul Mittal and a few others, is there's a perception, maybe you could talk about the perception too, that in many cases, women who might join new job creation programs or skills programs may drop out partway through, for perhaps many of the same reasons you have identified in the earlier discussions. What can be done to sustain and prevent dropout from these programs? Are there specific answers of that are focused on the women who have actually taken the effort and the initiative and the courage to join these programs, but then for reasons that perhaps you can comment on, they drop out? Any reflections, reactions from any of our panelists to this point of dropout from the either skills or employment programs? Katja, please.
I just don't want to speak too often, but I just think from our experience, and that comes again back to the point I think I have made before, is really before actually enrolling, to engage the wider ecosystem, to be in agreement and supportive of these initiatives. And I'm not saying that's the only way, but I think very often we see that the likelihood is higher to complete the programs if there has been a sensitization process before, where other family members and again communities are involved and are educated about the benefits actually. And I think again we have heard a lot of there's a business case for businesses, but there is also a business case for your own family business, right? So making people understand how this contributes to the wider wealth of the family ecosystem, I think is also one other way. That's a very simplistic answer. There's a lot. I'm looking at Diva, who probably could tell me even more, and I don't want to be too complex in my answer, but that's one way to look at it.
Yeah, Katja, and actually, let me point to Diva. Diva, if I could add a question to that's related here, which is from Lavanya, who says, given what Katja said about the need to engage the community and other members of the family, how can these pressures be eased, especially for young girls? And what are the circumstances when this has happened? Are there case studies or contexts in which we can hope for, from which we can learn as we look to other contexts?
Thanks, Rajesh. I mean, just to echo, this is of course a complex problem. There are many reasons why people drop out. It's got to do with the fact that, you know, a lot of migration, so women who are getting skilled don't find these suitable jobs and opportunities in rural areas and have to often migrate to urban areas where it's not sustainable for them, being far away from family, or they have to return due to marriage or other reasons related to their families. So I think it's indeed a very commendable effort for the Jaya Alliance and for Dharmalife to actually start creating jobs in rural areas to respond and make it sustainable for women to be able to work in a more flexible manner that's responsive to their needs and is responding to the fact that there are now shrinking fewer jobs for women in rural areas. There are other reasons there, we all discussed norms and the importance of working with communities and men. After marriage, there's very strong norms for women to not continue working. So we see women drop out over time as childbirth, children, domestic duties, marriage, all sort of take a toll on women's networks, on women's access to jobs. And I think keeping sort of that engagement with the community so that there is buy-in, more widespread buy-in for women to be able to move safely, to be able to access work, have the social and physical infrastructure that makes it possible for them to stay on. I think these are all great initiatives.
Yes, agreed. The social, physical, that's a nice way of framing it. And also flexibility, which is one of the wonderful things about the Dharmalife model, is, you know, there are, no matter where you live or where, male, female, but especially among women in rural parts, there are things that sometimes you have no choice but to have to address. And a role that allows for that flexibility might be very important. And that's one of the brilliant things about the Dharmalife model, where the entrepreneurs can decide when and how they wish to engage.
Rajesh, could I just add one more thought to this? Is just to build on the comments that Katya and Diva have shared. I think another piece of this that's so important for women to stick at what is an incredibly brave and hard act to kind of take part in a program, to look to really be a pioneer, I think, is role modeling. And I just wanted to highlight actually the importance to women all around the world of being able to see role models. And I say that specifically in the context of this event, because I'm sure that Bindu, Anita, and Nija have experienced times when they wanted or thought that they might drop out of the programs or the businesses of being an entrepreneur, and clearly push through. And so I hope that actually this is an opportunity, Bindu, Anita, and Nija, for you to be role models for all of the women in your communities, to continue not just to join programs, but to stay part of them.
And actually, thank you, Jesse. That's a very important point about these entrepreneurs as role models themselves for having overcome all of these challenges that everyone face, very many women face. That actually relates to a question that we won't get to, but it's something for us to keep in mind. Iris Steenkamp has a question for the entrepreneurs. Perhaps we could follow this up later, because I'm sensitive to the fact that we're running out of time. How did other women and indeed men in the villages react to your success or your participation in activities that Dharmalife engages in? Rather than, although I'd love to get the answer, I'm very sensitive to the fact that we're out of time, but I do know that there is a video coming up that Sohan will share with us that will partly try to address some of those issues. So Sohan, over to you, and please hold on for a video, and I don't want to cut that off from the program. Please, Sohan. Sohan, you're on mute.
I'm sorry. I'm going to rush through some of these slides because we're going to try and get to the video as soon as possible. So You already heard Rajesh talk about the DL Labs and how they are leveraging the relationships. We have 16,000 Dharmalife entrepreneurs across 13 states in India. We are leveraging this human network along with the digital connected network and deriving insights, which we then convert into action and into actions like these and actions on ground. So that's what it is. That's what the DL Labs in Sambanti is about. If you can go to the next slide. How can people join us? And this is also a call to action for We4Village. It's for DL Labs and for Jaya. It's a inclusive call to action on the way everyone here, people on this, who are watching this, people who are watching the stream, the way to help is to help at a concept level, to ideate, to help at a resources level through input, and help at an operational level through implement, and really help us bring alive this entire platform to scale and to help it sustain. The entire idea is actually to try and create a response ecosystem at the end of this, right? As we see COVID unfold, what's our response ecosystem, which is almost real time, and we are learning from each other as partners. And that's the call to action, is to come and help this alliance through ideation, inputs, and implementation. We can go to the next slide. You can reach out to us at Dharmalife, the email given in the previous slide, Dharmalife Labs. Can you go at dharmalifefoundation.org, or even visit the website for dharmalifelabs.com if you want to reach out to us and help us further. Also like to thank every member of the Alliance who's allowed us to get it this far. This is a purposeful and therefore a powerful alliance, which basically does three things. It's immediate response, AIDS recovery, and is building resilience in the face of COVID-19. And that's what this alliance really comes together for. And without much ado, let me jump straight into the video while we just have a few minutes left. Before you play the video, just to give a little context about the video, and it's very timely, I think what Jesse said, is role modeling, right? And role modeling, I would just add one layer to it, is relatable role models. Role models who are around you, who've gone through the same journey that you have. And what you'll see in this video are role models who've been through similar journeys, who had the barriers in the first part of what they went through, and they went through this journey to arrive at the other side as an inspiration. And that's what this video really captures. So please go ahead. And thank you everyone.
एक ऐसी लड़की जिसको एजुकेशन नहीं मिला, बचपन में शादी कर दी गई। मेरे मामा जी कहते थे कि लड़कियों को पढ़ाकर करना क्या है, पढ़कर करेगी क्या, चूल्हा चौके के सिवा तो कुछ करना नहीं है।
बचपन से ही मुझे ये बताया जाता है, जब मायके घर में रहते हैं, कि बेटा लड़कियां बाहर नहीं जाती, लड़कियां ज़्यादा पढ़ती नहीं है, लड़कियों की जल्दी शादी कर दी जाती है। अच्छा लड़का मिला, 17 साल में शादी कर दी, 17 साल में शादी, 4 जनवरी को शादी हुई, 8 नवंबर को बेटा हो गया। इस दौरान समझ भी नहीं पाई कि दुनिया क्या है।
मेरी शादी 12वीं करने के बाद ही हो गई थी। फिर उसके बाद मैंने सोचा कि अब तो ज़िंदगी जैसे ख़त्म सी हो गई है। शादी के बाद मैं पढ़ना चाहती थी, लेकिन पढ़ नहीं पाई। धीरे धीरे बच्चे हो गए, फैमिली की जिम्मेवारियां आ गई।
बाल विवाह की चपेट में आना और फिर कम उम्र में मां बन जाना। भारत में कई बार महिलाओं को मौका ही नहीं मिलता पढ़ने और सीखने का, कौशल हासिल करने का और रोजी रोटी कमाने का, मौका आर्थिक रूप से सशक्त होने का। 4 में 3 भारतीय महिलाएं कभी काम पर नहीं जाती। लेकिन जब एक समान अवसर दिया जाता है तो महिलाएं क्या कर सकती हैं?
बच्चे बड़े हो गए तो फिर मैंने अपने हस्बैंड को बोला कि मैं आगे पढ़ना चाहती हूँ, तो उन्होंने मेरा सहयोग दिया पूरा।
टिफिन सर्विस का काम किया, 2-3 दिन में 1 टिफिन आया, 2 टिफिन आए, 4 टिफिन आए, 5, ऐसे करते करते काम अच्छा चला। 50 टिफिन हो गए 2, 2.5, 3 साल के अंदर।
अगर समान अवसर दिया जाए तो सशक्त महिलाएं कई और महिलाओं को सशक्त बना सकती हैं। जब एक महिला को अपनी क्षमता और संभावनाओं के बारे में पता चलता है तो वो अपने भाग्य को संभाल सकती है और कई अन्य लोगों को प्रभावित कर सकती हैं। उन्हें जागरूकता की जरूरत है जिससे वो सीखने और कमाने का अवसर प्राप्त करें। इस दृष्टि से जया गठबंधन का उद्देश्य है ग्रामीण महिलाओं को आजीविका के माध्यम से सशक्त बनाना, ग्रामीण महिलाओं को उनकी क्षमता और उनकी क्षमता के माध्यम से पैसे कमाने के बारे में संवेदनशील बनाना, महिलाओं को उनके लिए उपलब्ध अवसरों के लिए मार्गदर्शन करना, महिलाओं की सहायता करना क्योंकि वे सीखना और कमाना चाहती हैं। फोर्ड फाउंडेशन द्वारा समर्थित और धर्मा लाइफ द्वारा संचालित जया अलायंस एक ऐसा मंच है जो महिलाओं को मार्गदर्शन, समर्थन और अवसर प्रदान करता है। जब आप विकसित होते हैं तो हमारा राष्ट्र विकसित होता है। आइए हम मिलकर विकास की ओर बढ़ें।
All right, so thank you everyone. We've reached the end of today's webinar, and I'd really like to take this opportunity on behalf of the moderators, the panelists, and everyone for your attention, for your time and your questions. And please look out for more such webinars and the data stories that we'll be coming up on our website. Thank you for your time, and till we meet again.